All right, let's jump right in. The title for today, Never Trust Friends, Learn to Use Enemies. Yeah, sounds pretty harsh, doesn't it? Maybe a little cynical. But what if I told you it's one of the most practical, time-tested principles for navigating the world of power? We're about to unpack why putting way too much trust in friends can be a fatal mistake, and how a former enemy might just be your greatest asset.
The philosopher Voltaire really nailed this idea centuries ago. It's a striking paradox, isn't it? I mean, we're all taught to cherish our friends and watch our backs for enemies. But in the high-stakes game of ambition and power, that common wisdom gets flipped completely on its head.
So that's the big question for us today. Why on earth would someone with everything to lose be more cautious with a loyal companion than a declared rival? The answer, it turns out, is buried deep in human nature. And to really get it, we're going to look at two emperors who faced this exact dilemma, with, well, let's just say dramatically different results.
First up, we have to start with a classic cautionary tale. This is what happens when good intentions and friendship collide head-on with raw power. And this story comes to us from the famously treacherous courts of the Byzantine Empire.
So picture this. You're a young, kind of insecure emperor. You're surrounded by schemers and backstabbers. You desperately need someone in your corner, someone who owes you everything. Who do you turn to? Well, of course, you turn to your best friend. And that's exactly what Michael III did. He made what seems like the most logical, most human choice imaginable. He picked Basilius, a man he had literally raised up from nothing.
And the path from heroism to horror is shockingly quick. It all starts with a genuinely heroic moment. Basilius saves Michael's life, so Michael repays him with promotions, gifts, and education. They become totally inseparable. Soon, Basilius is the most powerful man in the entire empire, second only to Michael himself. He even convinces Michael to have his own uncle murdered. And then comes the ultimate betrayal. The friend, the confidant, the man who owed him everything, has Michael stabbed to death so he can take the throne for himself.
So here's the key takeaway from this tragedy. Michael's generosity didn't create loyalty. It created this heavy sense of obligation that slowly turned toxic. For Basilius, gratitude became a burden. Instead of feeling thankful, he started to feel like all those favors were an insult, a constant reminder that he hadn't earned his position on his own. The friendship completely blinded Michael to this quiet, simmering resentment, right up until it was way too late.
Okay, so that's what can happen when you put your trust in a friend. But what's the alternative? Let's flip the coin and look at another emperor who faced an even more dangerous situation and played his hand like an absolute master.
You see, there are really two fundamentally different ways to handle power. On one side, you've got the common method. You rule by force, you eliminate your rivals, and you basically create this endless cycle of revenge. But Emperor Sung of China, he chose a completely different path. He decided to neutralize his rivals not with a sword, but with strategic generosity, literally turning his enemies into his allies.
And here's the genius of how he did it. Right after taking the throne, Sung invites his most dangerous generals, the guys most likely to try and overthrow him, to a big banquet. After plenty of wine is flowing, he dismisses the guards and just gets brutally honest. He tells them he lives in constant fear, and he knows they all dream of being emperor one day. But then, instead of threatening them, he offers them a golden parachute. Huge estates, piles of riches, and a life of peaceful retirement. All they have to do is give up their military commands.
And with that one move, he turned a pack of dangerous wolves into docile lambs. See, he understood this fundamental truth about people. A former enemy who has been shown mercy, who's been shown generosity, well, they don't expect anything, so they're genuinely grateful for everything they get. They have something to prove, which makes them far more reliable than a friend who just feels entitled to your favors.
And he didn't stop there. When a defeated rival, King Liu, who was afraid that a cup of wine was poisoned, Sung drank from it himself just to prove his trust. Later, when he found actual proof that another rival, Chen Shu, was plotting against him, he didn't execute him. He just quietly returned the evidence. It was a gesture that showed both his immense power and his incredible mercy. And acts like that, they won him unshakable loyalty.
And the results of this completely counterintuitive strategy? The Sung dynasty ruled for over 300 years. It completely shattered a long and bloody cycle of violent coups. This wasn't just some clever trick. It was a sustainable system of power built on brilliant psychology.
Okay, so we've seen the history. Now let's dig into the why. What's the psychology behind this principle? Why is a friend in a position of power so often a huge liability?
It often comes down to this really powerful and deeply human emotion, ingratitude. As the Roman historian Tacitus once wrote,
Gratitude is a burden and revenge a pleasure. Think about it. Receiving a favor, especially a really big one, can create this uncomfortable power imbalance. But getting revenge? That feels like you're balancing the scales. It's a psychological force we totally underestimate, and we do it at our own peril.
So when you hire a friend, you are essentially walking into a psychological minefield. Friends, they tend to hide their flaws to keep things peaceful. Your act of kindness, which is meant to be helpful, can secretly make them feel like they didn't really earn their spot, and that can lead to resentment. Envy can start to grow silently right under the surface, and pretty soon, personal feelings start to cloud professional judgment and competence. It gets messy.
The contrast here is just so stark. A friend often expects more and more favors, they get offended easily, and honestly, their loyalty has never really been tested. A former enemy, on the other hand, they expect nothing, and they receive mercy. They have everything to prove. Their loyalty is forged in the fire of that second chance, and that makes them work so much harder to show they're worthy of your trust.
So this brings us to the final and maybe the most important part of this whole lesson. It's not just about avoiding the dangers of friends. It's about actively learning how to use your enemies.
Abraham Lincoln summed up the most elegant application of this law perfectly. The ultimate victory over an enemy isn't to crush them into dust, it's to convert them. By bearing the hatchet and bringing them into your service, you don't just remove a threat, you gain a powerful, motivated ally.
But, and this is a really important nuance, the goal isn't always to make peace. Sometimes a declared enemy is actually more useful to you as an opponent than they would be as a friend.
As Chairman Mao understood, an enemy breathing down your neck keeps you sharp. A rival forces you to be focused, to be alert. Having a clear opponent helps you define your own cause and rally people to your side. A formidable foe is the ultimate training partner. They force you to get stronger, smarter, and way more resilient. Without them, it's easy to grow lazy and complacent.
So if we were to rank the usefulness of people in a power structure, it might look something like this. At the very top, the most valuable is the pardoned enemy. They're driven by gratitude and the need to prove themselves. Next up is the skilled stranger, who's driven by straightforward self-interest. And at the bottom, surprisingly, is the close friend, whose loyalty is always complicated by hidden emotions and expectations.
This quote really brings it all home, doesn't it? A wise person understands the psychology at play. They know that an enemy presents a clear, open challenge, while a friend can represent a hidden, emotional trap.
Now, there is a very cynical exception to this rule. A friend can be useful for a couple of things: doing the dirty work you don't want your name attached to, or serving as a convenient scapegoat when things go sideways. Their affection for you makes them willing to take risks. But listen, this is a one-time transaction. You use a friend this way, and you will have lost that friend for good. It's an incredibly dangerous game to play.
So, we'll end with this question for you to think about. When you really reflect on your own growth, your career, your skills, who has truly sharpened you? Was it the friend who always agreed with you? The one who always offered comfort? Or was it the rival, the competitor, maybe even the enemy, who challenged you and forced you to raise your game? The answer might just surprise you.